The Kalreth Empire had controlled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships moved through space like hunters, watching everything, tracking every vessel that dared to cross their territory. 74 star systems bent to their will, and their technology was unmatched, or so they believed. Commander Veshitar stood in the control room of Station Prime, the largest monitoring facility in the Outer Rim. His 6 eyes focused on the holographic display that floated before him. Something was wrong. The sensors showed a vessel moving through space at impossible speeds. His mandibles clicked together nervously, a sign of confusion among his kind. The ship on the display was small compared to Kalreth dreadnoughts, but it moved 3 times faster than anything in their fleet. The energy signature was completely unknown. No Empire markings, no identification codes. Nothing in their extensive database matched this vessel. Veshitar turned to his second officer, a younger Kalreth named Thornall. The junior officer was frantically working at his console, his claws tapping against the controls with increasing urgency. "Report," Veshitar demanded, his voice carrying the authority of decades of military service. Thornall looked up, his eyes showing genuine fear. "Commander, the system has run the identification scan 17 times. The database shows nothing. This vessel does not exist in our records. The propulsion signature does not match any known technology. The hull design is completely foreign." Veshitar moved closer to the display, studying the mysterious craft. It was sleek and angular, with strange symbols marked along its surface. The translation computers could not decipher the writing. The ship moved with clear purpose, heading directly toward the core systems of the Empire. "Send a warning transmission," Veshitar ordered. "Use standard protocols. Tell them they have entered Kalreth space without authorization. They have 1 hour to respond or we will intercept." Thornall sent the message across all known frequencies. Then they waited. The control room fell silent except for the soft hum of the monitoring equipment. Officers moved quietly between stations, but everyone kept glancing at the holographic display, watching the unknown vessel continue its steady approach. Veshitar thought about the state of the Empire. Things were not as stable as the High Chancellor claimed. The outer colonies had started rebelling against Kalreth rule. Resources were becoming scarce. The military was stretched thin, trying to maintain order across too many systems. Noble houses fought among themselves for power and influence. The Empire was showing cracks, and everyone could see it. This mysterious vessel had appeared at the worst possible time. If it was a scout ship for an invasion force, the Empire might not survive. If it was something else, something more advanced, it could shift the balance of power in ways Veshitar did not want to imagine. The hour passed slowly. Officers checked their instruments repeatedly, hoping for some response, some clue about the vessel's intentions. But the ship remained silent. It did not slow down. It did not change course. It simply continued toward the heart of Kalreth space, ignoring the warning as if it had never been sent. "Time is up, Commander," Thornall reported quietly. Veshitar felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. He had served the Empire faithfully for 40 cycles. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded vessels in dozens of battles. But something about this situation felt different. Something felt deeply wrong. "Activate Battle Group 7, Veshitar commanded. 15 vessels. Have them form an intercept pattern at coordinates 479. If the unknown vessel does not respond to their hails, they are authorized to open fire." "Yes, Commander," Thornall replied, relaying the orders immediately, within minutes. 15 Kalreth warships broke formation from their patrol routes and began moving toward the intercept point. These were not small patrol craft. These were full military vessels, each one capable of destroying entire cities. They carried the most advanced weapons in the Kalreth arsenal, energy cannons that could pierce through reinforced armor like it was paper. Veshitar watched as his fleet moved into position. The ships formed a wall across the unknown vessel's path. There was no way around them. The mysterious craft would have to stop, or it would have to fight. The fleet commander sent another warning. "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Kalreth space. Power down your engines immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is your final warning." Still, there was no response. The vessel continued forward, not slowing, not deviating from its course. It was as if the ship did not even acknowledge the presence of 15 warships blocking its path. They are either very brave or very foolish, Thornall muttered. Or very advanced, Veshitar added quietly. The unknown vessel came within range of the Kalreth weapons. The fleet commander gave one last warning, then opened fire when no response came. Energy beams lanced through space, bright streams of destructive power that had destroyed countless enemies over the centuries. Every weapon found its target. The energy beams struck the mysterious vessel directly. Veshtar waited for the explosion, for the debris cloud that would signal the end of this strange encounter. But the explosion never came. The holographic display showed the energy beams hitting some kind of shield around the vessel. The beams scattered harmlessly, absorbed by technology the Kalreth had never seen before. The mysterious ship did not even slow down. Then it accelerated. The vessel moved so fast it seemed to blur on the sensors. It weaved between the Kalreth ships with impossible precision, dodging weapons fire that should have been unavoidable. Within seconds, the unknown craft had passed through the entire battle group without taking a single hit. More concerning to Veshtar was what the vessel did not do. It did not return fire. It had the capability to dodge their weapons with ease, which suggested it likely had weapons of its own. But it chose not to use them. It simply left the Kalreth fleet behind, continuing on its original course as if nothing had happened. In the control room of Station Prime, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Officers stared at their displays in disbelief. The best warships in the Kalreth fleet had failed to even scratch this unknown vessel. Veshitar felt cold dread settle in his chest. He had fought many enemies in his long career, but he had never seen anything like this. Technology this advanced, this superior, should not exist. The Kalreth had explored the galaxy for thousands of years. They had encountered and conquered dozens of species. They knew what was possible and what was not. This vessel broke all those rules. It moved faster than physics should allow. Its shields absorbed energy that should have destroyed it. And most troubling of all, it chose not to fight back, suggesting a level of confidence that terrified Veshitar more than any weapon. "Send a priority message to Kalreth Prime," Veshtar said, his voice steady despite his fear. "Tell the High Chancellor we have encountered something beyond our understanding. Tell him the Empire may face a threat we cannot defeat." As Thornall began composing the urgent message, Veshitar continued to watch the mysterious vessel on the display. It grew smaller as it moved deeper into Kalreth space, heading toward the core worlds where billions of his people lived. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the CSS Wanderer, watching the alien fleet assemble ahead of them on the main view screen. His brown hair was slightly gray at the temples, a reminder that he had been in space service for 20 years. His crew of 47 had been traveling for 6 months now, following a signal that had somehow crossed the vast emptiness of space to reach Earth. The command deck was quiet except for the soft beeping of various instruments. Jake could feel the tension in the air. His crew was trained and professional, but this was their first encounter with alien life. Everything they did in the next few minutes would matter. "How many ships are we looking at, Danny?" Jake asked, keeping his voice calm and steady. Lieutenant Danny Hughes sat at the sensor station, his young face illuminated by the blue glow of his screens. He was fresh out of the academy, barely 25 years old, but he was the best sensor operator Earth had produced. 15 vessels, Captain," Danny reported. "They are much bigger than us. The largest one is about 3 times our size. Power readings suggest they are using fusion drives. Pretty old technology by our standards. They are moving into an intercept formation." Jake nodded slowly. The Wanderer was Earth's first deep space exploration vessel, built with the experimental Pierce drive that bent space instead of pushing through it. Earth scientists had sent them out to investigate an ancient signal, not to start a war with aliens. But here they were, facing down 15 warships. "Open a channel, Lisa," Jake said. "All frequencies." Communications officer Lisa Grant was in her early 30s, a veteran of Earth's satellite communications network before joining the space program. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "Channel open, sir." Jake cleared his throat. "Attention unknown vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship CSS Wanderer. We come in peace and mean no harm. We are responding to a distress signal and request permission to pass through your space." For several long seconds, there was no response. Then the speakers crackled to life with a harsh, clicking language that sounded nothing like any human tongue. The computer worked to translate it, analyzing patterns and comparing them to linguistic databases. When the translation finally came through, the words were cold and direct. "Unknown vessel, you have violated Calreth space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded or be destroyed." Jake exchanged glances with his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Paul Henderson. Paul was 42, a career military man who had served on 3 different vessels before joining the Wanderer mission. He was calm under pressure, which was exactly what Jake needed right now. Paul shook his head slightly, a silent warning. "Danny, if things go wrong, can we outrun them?" Jake asked quietly. Danny studied his screens carefully. "Yes, sir, easily. Our Pierce drive can move us out of range in seconds. But if we run, they might see it as hostile. They might chase us or send word ahead to other ships." Jake thought about their options. They could power down and let themselves be boarded, but that would put his crew at risk. They could run, but that might start a war. Or they could try to communicate further, show these aliens that Earth was not a threat. "Lisa, send another message," Jake decided. "Tell them we are not powering down, but we are willing to talk. Tell them we mean no harm and we are simply passing through. Paul, plot a course around their fleet, nice and slow. Let's not spook them, but let's also make sure we can escape if we need to." Paul moved to the navigation console and began working with the helm officer, plotting a path that would take them around the alien fleet at a safe distance. It was a careful balance between showing peaceful intent and maintaining tactical advantage. The Wanderer began its maneuver, moving slowly and deliberately. Jake hoped the aliens would understand that slow movements meant peaceful intentions, but he was wrong. The alien fleet opened fire without warning. Beams of bright energy lanced through the darkness of space, crossing the distance between the ships in an instant. The weapons were primitive by Earth standards, simple energy cannons that used focused plasma. But they were still deadly enough to punch through conventional armor. The beams struck the Wanderer's shields and scattered harmlessly. The exotic matter plating that surrounded the ship absorbed the energy like water soaking into sand. Warning lights flashed on the displays, but they showed minimal impact. "Shields holding at 98%, Danny reported. "Those weapons cannot hurt us." "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered, his voice still calm. "Do not return fire. I repeat, do not return fire. I want to get through this without killing anyone." The helm officer was Lieutenant Steve Brooks, a pilot who had flown fighter jets before joining the space program. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. The Wanderer began to weave through space, dodging the incoming fire with movements that seemed impossible for a ship its size. More energy beams filled the space around them, but none found their target. The Pierce drive allowed the Wanderer to move in ways that violated normal physics. It could change direction without the usual momentum limitations. It could accelerate and decelerate almost instantly. To the alien ships, it must have looked like the Wanderer was dancing through their weapons fire. "They are increasing fire rate," Danny warned. "All 15 ships are now shooting at us." "Keep dodging," Jake said. "Steve, take us through the fleet. Show them we could destroy them if we wanted to, but we are choosing not to." Steve guided the Wanderer directly toward the alien formation. The ship accelerated, moving faster than the alien weapons could track. It passed between 2 of the larger warships, close enough that Jake could see the details of their hulls on the view screen. The alien ships tried to rotate their weapons to follow, but the Wanderer was already past them. Within seconds, the Earth vessel had cleared the entire fleet and was continuing on its original course, leaving the aliens behind. In Station Prime, Commander Veshitar watched the entire encounter through the sensor feeds from his fleet. He saw his best ships, his most powerful weapons, fail to touch the unknown vessel. He watched as it moved through his formation like they were standing still, and most troubling, he noted that the mysterious ship never fired a single shot in return. "Get me a direct line to the High Chancellor," Veshitar said, his voice tight with fear. "He needs to see this immediately." Aboard the Wanderer, the crew began to relax as the alien fleet fell away behind them. But Jake was not relaxed. He was thinking about what this encounter meant. These aliens had ships, weapons, and obviously some kind of empire or government. They had fired first without proper communication. That suggested they were used to being in control, used to other species backing down. "Lisa, did you get a location fix on where that distress signal is coming from?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her instruments. "Yes, sir. It is coming from a small moon in a system about 2 days ahead of us at current speed." The system appears to be uninhabited, at least according to our long-range scans. All right, Jake said. Maintain course. Danny, keep full sensors running. If more alien ships show up, I want to know about them before they get close. Paul, I want you to prepare a report for Earth Command. Tell them we have made contact with an alien species called the Calreth, and the first encounter was hostile. Paul nodded and moved to begin writing the report. Jake sat back in his command chair thinking about the strange situation. Earth had finally met aliens, and the first thing those aliens did was shoot at them. It was not the first contact scenario anyone had hoped for. But what troubled Jake more was the distress signal they were following. If it was from humans, from some lost colony or exploration mission, then what had happened to them in this space controlled by hostile aliens? Had they been destroyed like the Calreth tried to destroy the Wanderer? Captain, Lisa said suddenly, I am picking up multiple transmissions from the Calreth. They are not directed at us, but our computers are translating them anyway. It sounds like they are reporting our encounter to their leadership. They are calling us an unknown threat and requesting instructions. Let me know if they send anything directly to us, Jake said. Otherwise, we continue to the source of that distress signal. We came out here to find answers, and that is what we are going to do. The Wanderer continued deeper into Calreth space, moving toward a mystery that would change everything for both species. High Chancellor Krevenal stood in his private chamber on Calreth Prime, watching the holographic recording for the third time. The images showed the unknown vessel moving through his fleet as if the warships were nothing more than decorations. His mandibles clenched tightly, a gesture that among his species indicated deep concern. The palace around him was vast and ancient, built 3,000 years ago when the Calreth first unified their empire. Golden walls reflected the light from twin suns outside. Servants moved quietly through corridors, careful not to disturb the High Chancellor when he was in this mood. But the grandeur of the palace could not hide the truth. The empire was failing. The outer colonies were in open rebellion. The noble houses fought among themselves while people starved. The military was stretched so thin that they could barely maintain order. And now this mysterious vessel had demonstrated technology far beyond anything the Calreth possessed. Krevenal dismissed the hologram with a wave of his claw. He summoned his chief strategist, an elderly Calreth named Zethkor. The old advisor had served under 4 high chancellors, surviving political purges and military coups through a combination of wisdom and careful neutrality. Zethkor entered the chamber, his movements slower than they once were. His scales had faded to a pale gray with age, and one of his eyes was clouded from an old injury. But his mind remained sharp. You have seen the recording? Krevenal asked, though he already knew the answer. I have, High Chancellor, Zethkor replied. I have also reviewed all our historical databases and made a troubling discovery. Krevenal gestured for him to continue. The unknown vessel claimed to be responding to a distress signal, Zethkor explained. I searched our archives for any distress calls from that region of space. I found something from 3,000 cycles ago during the early expansion period. A colony expedition was sent to explore the outer void beyond our current borders. They were attacked by raiders and sent a distress call. But at that time, our fleet was engaged in the unification wars. The council decided the colony was too far away to rescue. They were abandoned. Krevenal felt something cold settle in his chest. You are saying this vessel is from that lost colony? No, High Chancellor, Zethkor said carefully. I believe whoever built this ship found that colony, or what remained of it. The coordinates of the distress signal match the location where the colony was established. This vessel is going there now. Then we must intercept them before they reach that location, Krevenal said. If they find evidence of what happened to that colony, if they discover it was our forces that attacked them, it could give them reason to declare war. Zethkor shook his head slowly. High Chancellor, with respect, we cannot stop them. You saw what their ship can do. They moved through our fleet as if it did not exist. If they wish to reach that moon, they will reach it. No amount of military force will prevent them. Then what do you suggest? Krevenal demanded. I suggest we attempt proper communication, Zethkor replied. We send a diplomatic vessel with a message of peace. We offer to meet with them, to explain what happened 3,000 cycles ago. We cannot change the past, but we can at least face it honestly. Krevenal considered this advice. It went against every instinct he had as a military leader, But Zethkor was right. The mysterious vessel had demonstrated overwhelming technological superiority. If they wanted to destroy Calrith Prime, there was probably nothing that could stop them. Very well, Krevnal said finally. Prepare a diplomatic vessel, send them a message requesting a meeting, and pray to the old gods that they are more merciful than we were 3,000 cycles ago. Meanwhile, the CSS Wanderer had reached the location of the distress signal. The small moon appeared on their view screen, a gray and lifeless world orbiting a gas giant. Atmosphere readings showed thin air, barely breathable but enough to preserve things for a long time in the cold. There are structures on the surface, Danny reported from his sensor station. They appear to be artificial, metal and composite materials. They match human construction methods from about 100 years ago. Jake felt his heart sink. 100 years ago. That meant whoever sent the distress signal had been waiting for rescue for a century. The chances of finding anyone alive were essentially zero. Prepare a landing party, Jake ordered. Paul, you are with me. Kate, I want you and your security team ready. Lisa, keep monitoring for any Calreth ships. If they show up, let us know immediately. Sergeant Kate Miller commanded the Wanderer's small security detachment. She was 30 years old, tough and professional, trained in both combat and diplomacy. She assembled her team of 6 while Jake and Paul suited up in the landing bay. The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere, its engines kicking up dust on the moon's surface. The structures became clearer as they approached. It was definitely a human settlement, with the same architectural style Earth had used in its early colonial efforts. Solar panels stood in neat rows. Though most were damaged or destroyed, living modules sat in a circular pattern around a central building. But scorch marks covered everything. The black burns of energy weapons scarred the walls. Several buildings were partially collapsed. Debris littered the ground between structures. The shuttle landed near the central building. The landing party stepped out onto the moon's surface, their suits protecting them from the thin atmosphere. Jake walked slowly toward the nearest building, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. Check for any survivors or bodies, Jake ordered, though he already knew what they would find. Kate's team spread out, entering different buildings. Their reports came back quickly. Bodies found in Module 3. They have been here a long time, preserved by the cold. At least 20 individuals. More reports followed. Module after module contained the remains of colonists who had died fighting or trying to hide. Some were in defensive positions behind barricades. Others had barricaded themselves in storage areas. All had eventually died. Jake entered the central building with Paul. It appeared to have been the command center. Computer terminals sat dark and silent. A large table dominated the room, covered with old maps and planning documents, and in the center of the room stood a memorial stone. Jake approached the stone slowly. Names were carved into its surface, dozens of them. Men, women, and even children. These were the colonists, the people who had come to this moon hoping to build something new. At the bottom of the memorial, someone had carved a final message with what must have been their last bit of strength. The words were simple but devastating. We came in peace. We died alone. May someone find this and remember we tried. Paul stood beside Jake reading the message. Sir, look at the dates. They were attacked about a year after they arrived. Some survived for weeks afterward before finally dying. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These people had been explorers, pioneers. They had not come armed for war. They had come to explore and discover, and they had been slaughtered. Sir? Kate's voice came through the radio. You need to see this. I found their logs. Jake and Paul met Kate in what appeared to have been the communication center. She had managed to power up one of the terminals using a portable battery. The screen flickered to life, showing text entries from the colonists. Jake read through them quickly. The story became clear. The colonists had arrived and established their settlement. They had been peaceful, excited about their mission. Then Calreth ships had appeared. The colonists tried to communicate, tried to explain they were peaceful explorers. The Calreth had responded with weapons fire. The colonists had no military weapons, only tools and small arms for protection against potential wildlife. They had tried to defend themselves but stood no chance. The logs described how the Calreth ships bombarded them for hours, systematically destroying their settlement. Those who survived the initial attack had retreated to the strongest buildings. The final log entries were written by the colony leader, a woman named Helen Price. Her words described watching her people die one by one over the following weeks. Injuries without proper medical care, cold seeping in through damaged buildings, food and water running low, and always the knowledge that the distress signal they kept broadcasting would probably never be answered. Helen's last entry was dated 3 weeks after the attack. If anyone finds this, please tell Earth what happened. Tell them we tried our best. Tell them we did not give up. Tell them to remember that someone has to stand for what is right, even when it is hard, even when it costs everything. Jake finished reading and closed his eyes. 117 colonists had died on this moon. They had sent their distress signal into space hoping someone would come, and that signal had traveled for 100 years before finally reaching Earth. "Sir," Danny's voice came through from the Wanderer, "I am picking up energy signatures from the weapons that attacked this settlement. I am comparing them to the weapons that fired at us. They match perfectly. The Calreth were the ones who killed these colonists." Paul looked at Jake. "What do we do, Captain?" Jake opened his eyes and stared at the memorial stone through the window of the command center. He thought about Helen Price and the others who had died here. He thought about the message carved into the stone. He thought about Earth, still innocent and alone, not knowing that humanity's... The meeting was arranged in neutral space, far from any Calreth worlds or military installations. The Calreth had sent a diplomatic vessel, a smaller ship designed for negotiations rather than combat. It had taken 3 days of careful communication to arrange the meeting, with both sides working through translation difficulties and mutual suspicion. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the shuttle bay of the Wanderer, preparing to depart for the meeting. He wore his formal uniform, dark blue with the emblem of Earth emblazoned on the shoulder. His crew had spent the past 3 days carefully documenting everything they found on the colony moon, creating a comprehensive record of the massacre. Paul Henderson stood beside him, also in formal uniform. "Are you sure about this, Captain? We could just leave, report everything to Earth Command and let them handle it." "These colonists waited 100 years for someone to answer their call," Jake replied. "I am not going to ignore what happened to them. If there is any chance of preventing this from happening to someone else, we have to try." Lisa Grant and Dr. Greg Palmer joined them in the shuttle bay. Lisa would handle communications during the meeting, while Greg would provide medical and scientific perspective. Kate Miller wanted to come as security, but Jake insisted she stay aboard the Wanderer. If something went wrong, he needed someone capable of commanding the ship. The shuttle departed from the Wanderer and crossed the empty space to where the Calreth diplomatic vessel waited. The alien ship was elegant in its own way, with smooth curves and decorative patterns etched into the hull. It was much smaller than the warships they had encountered, barely larger than the Wanderer itself. As they approached, Jake could see the docking port opening. The shuttle settled smoothly into place and the docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. The 4 humans checked their equipment one final time, then stepped through the airlock into the Calreth vessel. The interior was strange to human eyes. The corridors were wider than necessary, with high ceilings that made Jake feel small. The lighting had a slightly yellow tint that reminded him of late afternoon sun on Earth. The air smelled faintly of something like cinnamon mixed with copper. A Calreth escort waited for them, a single individual in what appeared to be ceremonial robes. The alien was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with scales that shifted color slightly in the light. 6 eyes regarded the humans with what might have been curiosity or concern. 4 arms moved in gestures that the translation device identified as welcoming. "Follow, please," the escort said through the translation device. The voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with clicking sounds. They walked through the corridors until they reached a large chamber. The room was circular, with a round table in the center. Windows along one wall showed the stars outside. And waiting at the table was High Chancellor Krevnell himself, along with his advisor Zethkor, and 2 others who appeared to be military officials. Krevnell stood as the humans entered. He was larger than the escort, his scales a deeper shade of green, with markings that Jake guessed indicated his rank or status. The High Chancellor wore robes that looked both ceremonial and practical, decorated with symbols that probably meant something important in Calreth culture. "Captain Morrison," Krevnell said, the translation coming through clearly. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Please sit." Jake and his team took seats across from the Calreth delegation. The table was large enough that there was comfortable space between the 2 groups. Greg noticed that the chairs had been modified to accommodate human proportions. a small gesture that suggested the Calreth had put some thought into making them comfortable. "High Chancellor," Jake said, keeping his voice neutral and professional. "Before we begin, I need to know if you are aware of what we found on that moon." Krevenal's mandibles moved in a way that might have been a sigh.
"I am aware."
"My advisor Zethkor discovered the records in our historical archives. I know that a Calreth battle group attacked and destroyed a colony there 3,000 cycles ago." Jake placed a data device on the table and activated it. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing images from the colony, the destroyed buildings, the scorch marks, the memorial stone with its carved names. The final message left by Helen Price: 117 people, Jake said quietly. Men, women, and children. They came to explore, to build something new. They were peaceful. According to their logs, they tried to communicate with your ships, and your response was to murder them all. The Calreth delegation watched the images in silence. Jake saw Zethkor's eyes dim slightly. A reaction he had learned indicated sadness or regret among their species. Even Krevenal seemed affected, his mandibles drooping. "Captain Morrison, I cannot defend what was done," Krevenal said after a long moment. "That attack occurred during what we call the Expansion Wars, a dark period in our history. Many species were conquered or destroyed as we built our empire. The commanders who gave those orders are long dead, but their crimes remain. And the empire that gave those orders still exists," Paul said firmly. "Still rules over dozens of species. Still uses fear and force to maintain control." One of the military officials, a Calreth with darker scales, bristled at this. "You know nothing of our empire or our history. You arrive in our space with superior technology and judge us?" "We judge you by your actions," Jake replied calmly. "Your ships fired at us without proper communication. You tried to destroy us just like you destroyed that colony. The only difference is we had shields that could stop your weapons." Krevenal raised one of his arms, a gesture that seemed to calm the military official. "Captain Morrison is correct. We did fire first. And yes, our empire has committed many crimes over the centuries. I will not insult you by making excuses." "Then what will you do?" Lisa asked. "Because we have documented everything we found on that moon. Earth Command will receive our report. They will know that humanity's first contact with alien life ended with more than 100 of our people being murdered." Krevenal leaned forward, his 6 eyes focusing on Jake. "I must be honest with you, Captain. My empire is failing. The outer colonies are in rebellion. We have stretched our resources too thin, trying to maintain control over too much space. Noble houses fight among themselves while our people suffer. When news of your vessel spread, when word got out that a single unknown ship defeated our fleet without firing a shot, it inspired the rebels. You have already changed the balance of power in this galaxy simply by existing. So you want our help?" Jake asked, surprised by the admission. "No," Krevenal said. "I want to prevent more bloodshed. If you leave now, if you take your report back to Earth and never return, my empire will likely collapse within a few years. Thousands, perhaps millions, will die in the chaos. If you stay and use your superior technology to impose your will, you will become the new oppressors, and the cycle will continue." Greg Palmer spoke up for the first time. "Then what do you suggest, High Chancellor?" "Transformation," Zethkor answered. "Not destruction, but fundamental change. The empire must end, yes, but it should give way to something better. A system where all species have voice and representation. Where force is not the only currency of power." Jake sat back, thinking. This was far beyond his authority as a ship captain. These were decisions that should be made by Earth Command, by diplomats and politicians. But those people were months away. The situation was happening now. "High Chancellor, here's what I propose," Jake said slowly, working through his thoughts. "You will make a public broadcast to your entire empire. You will tell them the truth about what happened to the human colony. You will apologize officially on behalf of the Calreth government. And you will announce that the empire is beginning negotiations for a new form of government, one where all species have equal representation." The military officials both made sharp clicking sounds that the translator identified as protests. But Krevenal held up a hand to silence them. "And if I refuse?" the High Chancellor asked. "Then I will make the broadcast myself," Jake replied calmly. "We have already copied your communication networks. We have the technical capability to override your systems and send any message we want to every world in your empire." "That would be an act of war," the military official said angrily. "No," Jake corrected. "Firing on my ship without cause was an act of war. Murdering 117 colonists was an act of war. What I am offering is a chance to avoid more war, more death. A chance to build something better. Krevnal looked at his advisors, then back at Jake. You would dismantle an empire of 3,000 years without firing a single shot. I would help you transform it into something worth preserving, Jake said. The colonists who died on that moon believed in peace and building something better. They left a message asking whoever found them to stand for what is right. I intend to honor that message. The room fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the tension in the air. Everything balanced on this moment. The future of the entire region of space hung on what the High Chancellor decided next. Finally, Krevnal made a gesture with his arms that Zethkor had taught the humans meant agreement. Very well, Captain Morrison. I will make the broadcast. I will tell the truth, face the consequences, and work toward building something better. The broadcast studio on Calrith Prime was ancient, built when the Empire first began using communication technology to maintain control over its expanding territory. The walls were decorated with symbols of conquest and domination, images of Calreth military victories over the centuries. High Chancellor Krevnal found the decorations suddenly distasteful as he prepared to dismantle everything they represented. Jake Morrison stood off to the side with Lisa Grant, watching the Calreth technicians prepare the equipment. They had spent 2 days planning this broadcast with Zethkor and a small team of trusted advisors. The message had been carefully written to be honest without being inflammatory, to accept responsibility without placing blame on individual Calreth citizens. Are you sure about this? Zethkor asked Krevnal quietly. Once you speak these words, there is no taking them back. The noble houses will call for your execution. The military will likely fracture. Some colonies may declare independence immediately. I am sure, Krevnal replied. The Empire is already dying, old friend. At least this way it might die with some dignity, and perhaps something better can grow from the ashes. The technicians signaled that everything was ready. The broadcast would go out simultaneously to all 74 systems in the Empire. Every communication device, every public screen, every ship's display would carry the message. It was the most watched transmission in Calrith history. Krevnal positioned himself in front of the camera. He wore simple robes without the symbols of his office. He had decided that this message should come from a person, not from the High Chancellor. He took a deep breath, his mandibles still as he composed himself. The camera activated. A red light indicated the broadcast was live. People of the Calreth Empire, Krevnal began. I speak to you today not as your High Chancellor, but as one who must face a terrible truth. For 3,000 cycles, we have told ourselves that our empire was built on strength and unity. We have celebrated our conquests and honored our military victories, but we have never truly faced what those victories cost. He paused, letting his words settle. Jake watched the monitors showing reactions from various worlds. People were stopping what they were doing, gathering around screens, listening with confusion and growing concern. 3,000 cycles ago, during the expansion wars, a colony of explorers from a distant world established a settlement on a moon in what is now our outer territory. These explorers were not warriors. They were scientists, families, children. They came in peace, seeking only to study and learn. Krevnal's voice grew heavier. Our forces found them. These peaceful explorers tried to communicate. They showed no hostility, and we destroyed them. We bombarded their settlement for hours. We killed 117 individuals, including children. We left them to die slowly on that cold moon, and we never looked back. Gasps and clicking sounds came from the technicians around the studio. Even those who had known about the broadcast had not expected such direct admission. I tell you this not to shame our people, but because we must face what we have done. That colony sent a distress signal calling for help. That signal traveled through space for 100 years, and recently it reached the homeworld of those explorers. They sent a ship to investigate. That ship is here now. Krevnal gestured off camera. Jake stepped forward into the frame. The sight of an alien, a human standing beside the High Chancellor, sent shockwaves through every world watching. This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth, Krevnal continued. His people found the ruins of that colony. They found the bodies of their dead. They found a memorial stone with a message carved into it. That message said, "We came in peace. We died alone. May someone find this and remember we tried." Jake spoke then, his words translated into Calreth language by the computer. My people sent me across the vastness of space to find out what happened to those colonists. I found them. I found the truth. And now I stand before you not seeking revenge but seeking change, Crevenal continued. Captain Morrison's ship encountered our fleet. We fired upon them without proper communication, just as we did to their colonists. But their technology is far superior to ours. They easily avoided our weapons. They could have destroyed our entire fleet, could have devastated our worlds. But they did not. They chose peace when we offered only violence. The High Chancellor's mandibles trembled slightly. This encounter has forced me to examine our empire honestly. I have looked at our history, at the species we have conquered, at the rebellions we have crushed, and I see that we have become exactly what we once fought against in our own unification wars. We have become oppressors. Murmurs spread through the studio. One of the military officials who had been forced to attend the broadcast stood up and left. Sethkor watched him go but made no move to stop him. Therefore, I am making the following announcements, Crevenal said. First, I formally apologize on behalf of the Calreth government for the massacre of the human colony. No words can undo that crime, but we must acknowledge it. Second, I am calling for immediate negotiations toward establishing a new form of government. The Calreth Empire will be dissolved. In its place, we will work to create a galactic assembly where all species have equal representation and voice. The studio erupted in shocked clicking and chittering. The technicians looked at each other in disbelief, but the broadcast continued. Third, I'm inviting representatives from every world, every species within our current territory to attend a constitutional convention. We will establish the rules for this new government together, not through force but through cooperation. And Captain Morrison has agreed that Earth will provide technical assistance and guidance during this transition. Jake spoke again. To be clear, Earth is not seeking to conquer or control anyone. We are here because we believe the colonists who died on that moon were right. They believe that peace and cooperation are stronger than violence and domination. We are here to help you build something better, if you want our help. Crevenal concluded the broadcast. This will not be easy. There will be those who resist change, who cling to the old ways, but I have seen what continuing down our current path will bring. More war, more death, more suffering. We can do better. We must do better. The choice is yours, people of what was once the Calreth Empire. What kind of future do you want to build? The broadcast ended. The red light on the camera went dark. Silence filled the studio for several long seconds. Then chaos erupted across the galaxy. Within minutes, reports began flooding in from every system. Some colonies immediately declared independence. Military commanders issued conflicting statements, some supporting the High Chancellor, others calling him a traitor. Noble houses began emergency meetings to decide their response. Rebel leaders cautiously expressed support for the proposed assembly while demanding specific guarantees. In the studio, Sethkor approached Crevenal with a datapad. High Chancellor, 3 noble houses have already called for your arrest. 5 military groups have declared they will not accept these changes, but 18 colony worlds have sent messages of support, and the Rebel Alliance has requested an immediate meeting to discuss the proposed assembly. It begins, Crevenal said quietly. Jake received a communication from the Wanderer. Danny's voice came through clearly. Captain, we are detecting massive amounts of communication traffic across all Calreth systems. Some military ships are moving, but most seem confused about what to do. No one has fired any weapons yet. Keep monitoring, Jake ordered. Let me know immediately if anyone starts shooting. Lisa was analyzing the translated reactions from various worlds. Captain, the response is mixed but leaning positive. Most people seem shocked but not angry. A lot of the messages are asking questions, wanting more information. Paul contacted Jake from the Wanderer. Sir, we are receiving communications from dozens of species we did not even know existed in this empire. They are all asking the same thing. Is this real? Is the empire really ending? Jake looked at Crevenal. The High Chancellor looked tired, older than he had appeared before the broadcast. What do we tell them? Jake asked. Tell them the truth, Crevenal replied. Tell them it is real. The empire is ending, and we are asking them to help us build what comes next. Over the following hours, the situation began to stabilize. The initial shock gave way to careful optimism in most systems. The Rebel Alliance agreed to a ceasefire and sent representatives to discuss the proposed assembly. Several military commanders who initially resisted realized they had no support among their crews and stood down. But not everyone accepted the changes peacefully. 3 noble houses controlled significant military resources and announced they would restore the empire by force. 2 Calreth battle groups declared loyalty to these houses and began moving toward Calreth Prime. How long until those fleets arrive? Krevnal asked his military advisors. 4 days at their current speed, came the answer. Jake made a decision.
Wanderer, this is Captain Morrison.
Set course for intercept with those rebel fleets. Let's show them what they are up against if they choose violence. Kate's voice came back. Sir, you want us to engage 2 full battle groups? No, Jake replied. I want us to position ourselves between them and Calreth Prime. We won't fire unless fired upon. But we will make it very... The CSS Wanderer hung in space between 2 approaching Calreth battle groups in the capital world. Jake stood on the command deck watching the tactical display as the rebel fleets drew closer. Each battle group consisted of 20 warships, 40 vessels total, all moving with clear hostile intent toward Calreth Prime. They are not slowing down, Danny reported from sensors. Their weapons are powered up and targeting systems are active. Captain, I think they mean to fight their way through us. Open a channel to both fleet commanders, Jake ordered. Lisa worked her console, establishing communication links. Channels open, sir. Jake kept his voice calm and clear. Attention commanders of the approaching fleets. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel CSS Wanderer. You are heading toward Calreth Prime with obvious hostile intentions. I am asking you to stand down and participate in the peaceful transition that Chancellor Krevnal has proposed. The response came from a Calreth military commander whose scales showed the dark coloring of the noble house he served. Unknown vessel, you have no authority here. You are an alien who has corrupted our High Chancellor with false promises. Stand aside or be destroyed along with the traitors on Calreth Prime. The second fleet commander added his own message. We will restore the Empire to its proper glory. We will purge the weakness that has infected our leadership, and we will deal with you and your kind as we should have when you first entered our space. Jake looked at Paul, who shook his head slightly. There would be no reasoning with these commanders. They were committed to violence, to preserving the old ways no matter the cost. Very well, Jake said. I gave you a chance. Remember that you chose this path. Steve, move us to intercept position. Danny, activate all defensive systems. Lisa, send a message to Calreth Prime. Tell them to prepare their planetary shields. This might get messy. The Wanderer moved forward, positioning itself directly in the path of the approaching fleets. The small Earth vessel looked tiny compared to the 40 Calreth warships bearing down on it. But Jake knew appearances could be deceiving. They are opening fire, Danny announced. Energy beams lanced through space from 40 different ships, all converging on the Wanderer. The weapons fire was coordinated and precise, a military formation designed to overwhelm any defensive system through sheer volume of firepower. The beams struck the Wanderer's shields and scattered harmlessly. Not a single shot penetrated the exotic matter plating. The ship's defensive systems absorbed energy that should have been enough to destroy an entire fleet. Shields at 96%, Danny reported. Their weapons are not even close to strong enough. Return fire, Jake ordered. Target their weapon systems only. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The Wanderer's weapons came online. Unlike the primitive energy cannons of the Calreth, Earth's weapons used focused particle beams that could be precisely calibrated. The Wanderer fired 40 times in quick succession, each shot perfectly aimed at a different warship. The particle beams struck with surgical precision. On each Calreth vessel, weapon systems exploded or simply stopped functioning. Targeting computers went offline. Energy capacitors overloaded. Within 30 seconds, 40 warships found themselves completely disarmed. Cease fire, Jake ordered. Open channel again. Lisa established the connection. Jake spoke clearly. Fleet commanders, your weapons are disabled. Your ships are intact and your crews are unharmed, but you can no longer threaten anyone. Now you have a choice. You can continue trying to attack with disabled ships, which will accomplish nothing. Or you can stand down and send representatives to the Constitutional Convention. Silence followed. Jake could imagine the shock and confusion on those Calreth warships. They had just watched a single small vessel disable 40 of their best military ships without even trying hard. The demonstration of technological superiority was absolute. Finally, one of the fleet commanders responded. His voice had lost its earlier arrogance. What are you? We are humans from Earth, Jake replied. We are the people whose colonists you murdered 100 years ago. We have every reason to hate you. every justification for revenge. But we are choosing peace instead. We are giving you the same choice. Stand down, help build something better, or continue fighting a battle you cannot win. The tactical display showed the fleets had stopped advancing. The ships hung motionless in space, their commanders probably arguing among themselves about what to do next. Greg Palmer spoke from his station. "Captain, I'm picking up internal communications from those ships. It sounds like the crews are refusing to continue. They are telling their commanders that fighting us is suicide." Minutes passed. Then the First Fleet commander sent a new message. "Captain Morrison, our weapons are disabled. We cannot reach Calreth Prime. We have no choice but to stand down." "You have a choice," Jake corrected. "You are choosing to stop fighting. That is different and far more important. Send representatives to the convention. Help decide what comes next." The Second Fleet commander was slower to accept defeat, but eventually he too agreed to stand down. Both fleets began turning away, heading back toward their home bases. The immediate crisis was over. On Calreth Prime, High Chancellor Krevnal watched the entire encounter on his displays. Zethkor stood beside him, mandibles spread in what might have been amazement. 40 warships, Zethkor said quietly. He disabled 40 warships without destroying a single one, without killing a single crew member. This is power beyond anything we imagined. It is not just their technology, Krevnal observed. It is their restraint. Captain Morrison could have destroyed those fleets, could have killed thousands. Instead, he chose to disable and de-escalate. That kind of discipline is more frightening than any weapon. Over the following weeks, representatives from 43 different species gathered on a neutral station that had been hastily constructed for the purpose. The station was built using a combination of Calreth engineering and human technology, a symbol of the cooperation that the new government would require. Jake attended the opening session along with Ambassador Linda Shaw, who had traveled from Earth specifically for this purpose. Linda was in her 50s, a career diplomat who had negotiated peace agreements on Earth and now brought that experience to a galactic stage. The assembly hall was vast, designed to accommodate different species with different environmental needs. Some areas were kept warmer for species that preferred heat. Other sections had higher oxygen levels. Translation devices ensured everyone could understand each other. High Chancellor Krevnal, now simply referred to as Council Member Krevnal, opened the proceedings. "Representatives of all species, we gather today to build something that has never existed in this region of space. A government based on cooperation rather than domination, on mutual respect rather than fear, on shared prosperity rather than exploitation." The first speaker was a representative of the Threxian people, a species that had been conquered by the Calreth 200 years ago. The Threxian was small and covered in fur, with large eyes that suggested a species adapted to low light. "We have suffered under Calreth rule for generations," the Threxian said. "Our resources were taken. Our people were used as labor. Why should we believe this new government will be any different?" Ambassador Linda Shaw stood to respond. "Because this time you will have a voice in creating it. Earth is not here to rule anyone. We are here to help establish a system where everyone has representation, where decisions are made collectively, not imposed from above." A Calreth military officer who had supported the transition stood next. "I fought for the Empire for 30 years. I believed we were bringing order to chaos. But I have seen what our order cost. I have seen the suffering we caused. I want to help build something my children can be proud of." Species after species spoke, sharing grievances, expressing hopes, proposing ideas for how the new government should function. The discussions were sometimes heated, often emotional, but always moving forward. Jake watched from the observers section with Paul and Lisa. Greg had returned to the Wanderer, which remained in orbit as both a symbol and a safeguard. Kate was coordinating security for the convention with representatives from multiple species. "Do you think it will work?" Lisa asked quietly. "I think they are trying," Jake replied. "That is more than most species get the chance to do." The convention lasted 6 weeks. Compromises were made, arguments were settled, and slowly a framework emerged. The new government would be called the Galactic Assembly. Each species would have representatives proportional to their population, but with protections to ensure smaller species still had meaningful voice. Decisions would be made by majority vote, but fundamental rights could not be violated even by majority rule. Military forces would be reduced and reorganized into a mutual defense fleet, with officers from multiple species serving together. Economic resources would be shared more equitably. Education and healthcare would become universal rights rather than privileges of the wealthy core worlds. On Earth, construction had accelerated on 5 new deep space vessels. The CSS Unity arrived at the convention, carrying medical supplies, teachers, engineers, and agricultural experts who would help rebuild struggling colonies. The CSS Explorer and CSS Destiny followed within weeks, bringing more resources,